The roast chicken sat untouched in the center of the table, steam curling upward like question marks. My brother Marcus shifted in his chair, fork hovering mid-air. Aunt Linda's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. Mom's face went from triumphant to confused in exactly 3 seconds. I watched the micro-expressions, jaw tightening first, then the slight furrow between her eyebrows, finally the pale wash of color draining from her cheeks. "What did you say?" Mom's voice cracked on the last word. I set my phone down gently, screen still glowing with the call log. "You heard Sarah. I'm the board chair. Have been for 14 months. The silence that followed was the kind that has texture, thick, suffocating, the sound of a family's entire understanding of reality collapsing in real time. Let me back up. For 5 years I worked at Chin and Associates, the commercial real estate firm my grandfather founded in 1987. Started in acquisitions, worked my way to senior analyst, then VP of operations. Good salary. 65-hour weeks. Every family dinner the same script. "How's the job, Emma?" Polite interest. Nothing more. They never asked what I actually did. Never asked about the deals I closed, the properties I analyzed, the strategic direction I helped shape. I was furniture. Background noise in the Chin family success story. The real story was Marcus. MBA from Wharton. Dad's pride. Mom's golden child. He joined the firm 3 years ago in sales. Made decent commissions. Got his name in the company newsletter twice. Every Sunday dinner became the Marcus show. His latest deal, his client dinners, his vision for the company's future. I calculated once during one of these dinners that Marcus spoke for an average of 42 minutes per meal. I averaged 6 minutes, usually in response to direct questions. The ghost ledger started forming in my mind then, though I didn't have a name for it yet. But here's what they didn't know. Grandfather didn't just give me a job. He gave me shares. Started when I turned 25, 2% annually as performance bonuses, structured as part of my compensation package. By the time I was 32, I held 17% of Chin and Associates. When grandfather died 18 months ago, his will contained a surprise for everyone. He'd established a trust that transferred his remaining 35% stake to me, with specific conditions. I couldn't sell for 5 years and I had to maintain active board involvement. The family kept their shares. Dad had 18%, Mom had 12%, Marcus had 8%, scattered relatives held the remaining 10%. Total, I controlled 52%. Majority shareholder. Board chair by proxy, formalized at a private board meeting my parents chose not to attend because they didn't deal with administrative nonsense. That administrative nonsense was me assuming control of the company my grandfather built. I kept working. Same office, same hours, same quiet competence. The board meetings happened during my business trips. The strategic planning sessions were my industry conferences. I restructured the management team, improved our acquisition strategy, expanded into 3 new markets. Revenue increased 34% in 14 months. Mom ran HR. Dad handled executive relations, which mostly meant golf with clients. Marcus kept selling. They assumed the improvements were just good market conditions. Gambler's fallacy. That's what I was guilty of. I kept thinking if I proved myself capable enough, smart enough, essential enough, they'd see me clearly. But they'd already decided who I was in their story. Supporting cast, not lead. The slot machine of family approval kept taking my quarters, and I kept feeding it, convinced the jackpot was mathematically inevitable. The firing came out of nowhere. Or rather, it came from Marcus. He'd pitched a deal to the board. A strip mall acquisition in a declining neighborhood, 20-year commitment, terrible fundamentals. I'd voted no in the board meeting. So had 3 other members. Deal died 4-2. Marcus never knew I was in that meeting. Never knew I was one of the no votes. He just knew his brilliant plan got rejected by some bureaucratic board members who don't understand modern real estate. So he went to Mom. Told her I was undermining him in the office, creating a toxic work environment, holding the company back with my outdated analysis methods. Mom called Dad. They called a family meeting disguised as Sunday dinner. Invited Aunt Linda and Uncle James as witnesses. Marcus brought his wife Kelly. 12 people total, including my cousin Sarah's kids running around the living room. They'd planned the whole thing. Dad had severance papers drawn up, 2 months' salary, immediate termination, Surrender of company laptop and key card within 24 hours. Mom had already scheduled an HR meeting for Monday morning to process my exit. The calculation was simple in their minds. Fire the problem, protect Marcus, move forward. What they didn't calculate: you can't fire the board chair without board approval. And you definitely can't fire the majority shareholder. 14 months. Dad repeated, his voice hollow. The severance papers sat in front of him, suddenly meaningless. You've been board chair for 14 months? Since September 2024. When the estate finalized. I kept my tone even, factual. The lawyers sent notification to all family shareholders. Certified mail. Uncle James cleared his throat. I got that letter. Read it at the kitchen table. He looked at my parents. You didn't read yours? We thought it was standard legal formality, Mom said weakly. After the funeral, all those documents. The document that said, notice of board leadership change in the subject line? I pulled up my email on my phone, found the PDF, turned it toward them. This one. Marcus grabbed for my phone. I moved it calmly out of reach. That's impossible, Marcus said. You're in acquisitions. You analyze deals. You don't run the company. I'm the board chair who votes on deals, I corrected. Including the strip mall proposal you brought last month. The one with 23% projected vacancy, declining foot traffic, and an anchor tenant whose lease expires in 18 months with no renewal clause. That one. His face went scarlet. You killed my deal. The board killed your deal. I just explained why the numbers didn't work. In detail. For 45 minutes. With comparables and market analysis. My phone buzzed. Sarah from HR again. Emma, I have your parents' personnel files here. Should I review reporting structure with them? I put her on speaker again, setting the phone in the center of the table next to the chicken. Sarah, can you explain the company hierarchy? Her professional voice filled the room. Chin and Associates has a 7-member board of directors. Emma Chin serves as board chair and holds majority controlling interest. The board oversees executive leadership, which includes Catherine Chin as HR Director and Robert Chin as VP of Client Relations. Both positions report ultimately to board oversight. Marcus Chin is a senior sales associate in the residential division. And if Catherine or Robert wanted to terminate a board member's employment? I asked. They would need to bring that motion to the full board for a vote. The board would require cause, documentation, and majority approval. In the case of the board chair specifically, you'd need a supermajority, 5 of 7 votes. Thank you, Sarah. Can you send the organizational chart to everyone at this table? Already sent to all company email addresses on file. Phones started buzzing around the table. Aunt Linda opened hers first. Her eyes went wide. She turned the screen toward Uncle James. The chart was beautiful in its simplicity. At the top, Board of Directors with my name in bold. Below that, Executive Leadership. Below that, Department Heads including Mom and Dad's names. Below that, Sales Divisions. Marcus's name in 10-point font, 3 levels down from mine. This is a mistake, Mom said, but her voice had lost all its certainty. Your grandfather wouldn't have. Grandfather spent 38 years building this company, I interrupted, and my voice had an edge now, sharp and cold as January wind. He taught me real estate when I was 16. Every Saturday we'd drive to properties together. He'd point at buildings and say, "What do you see, Emma?" Not to Marcus. To me. Because I saw what he saw, potential, risk, fundamentals, truth. I stood up, walked to the window. The city lights spread out below my parents' high-rise condo. A condo in a building Chin and Associates had acquired and developed 7 years ago, a deal I'd structured when I was 26. He gave Marcus a job because you asked him to. Gave him a salary, some shares, a title. But he gave me the company. Because I earned it. Every Saturday for 22 years I earned it. The ghost ledger crystallized in that moment. Every family dinner where my achievements were nice, while Marcus's were celebrated. Every promotion I got that warranted a good for you while Marcus's generated champagne toasts. Every strategic insight I shared that was met with polite nods, while Marcus's half-formed ideas sparked hour-long discussions. Cost. Self-esteem, confidence, the belief that my work mattered to the people who should have mattered most. Price. Unquantifiable. Never recoverable. The severance papers, I said, turning back to face them. Those were for me? Dad pushed them across the table, a reflex. I picked them up, read through them slowly. 2 months' salary. Based on my base compensation of $180,000 annually. They were offering me $30,000 to leave. My total compensation last year, including board fees, profit sharing, and equity appreciation, was $847,000, I said calmly. This severance represents 3.5% of my annual income. It also represents illegal termination of a board member without cause or due process. Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against hardwood. This is insane. You can't just, grandfather wouldn't have wanted. Grandfather's will was very specific. I pulled up another document on my phone. Section 14, subsection C. I leave controlling interest to Emma Chen because she understands that real estate is not about buildings. It's about people, communities, and long-term value creation. She has demonstrated this understanding consistently over 15 years of service. I looked at Marcus directly. Your strip mall deal? The one I rejected? That property is 2 blocks from a new transit line breaking ground next year. In 5 years it'll be prime development territory. But you wanted a 20-year commitment to a failing retail model. You saw a quick commission. I saw a bad investment. That's one deal, he shot back. You've brought 17 proposals to the board in 3 years. I've voted against 11 of them. All 11 would have lost money. The 6 I approved have returned an average of 23% annually. Uncle James was reviewing something on his phone now. Emma, this says you led the Riverside acquisition last year. The mixed-use development. Yes. That was a $47 million deal. Made the business section of the Times. $47.3 million. Closed in June. Under budget, ahead of schedule. Currently 94% leased with anchor tenants committed long-term. Aunt Linda set down her wine glass with a heavy thunk. Catherine. Robert. Did you know about any of this? Silence. Did you know your daughter was running the company? Mom's hands were shaking. I watched her try to pick up her water glass twice, set it down both times. We thought. The board was mostly ceremonial. We thought the lawyers handled everything. The lawyers handle what the board directs them to handle, I said. Which I've been directing for 14 months. My phone buzzed again. This time it was David Chin, my grandfather's attorney and the executor of his estate. Emma, your mother just called me asking about the will. Should I return her call? I typed back, yes. Please explain everything. To my parents, I said, David will explain the trust structure, the voting rights, and the conditions of transfer. He'll also explain that any attempt to contest the will was required to be filed within 6 months of grandfather's death. That deadline passed 11 months ago. Dad's face had gone through several colors. Red, white, now a grayish pallor that made him look a decade older. What happens now? Now. I picked up my bag from the back of the chair. Now I go home. Tomorrow I have a board meeting at 9. There's a proposal for a new acquisition in the downtown corridor. $63 million, mixed retail and residential, positioned to benefit from the new convention center expansion. After that, I have lunch with the mayor to discuss our affordable housing initiative. I looked at Mom. On Tuesday, Sarah will schedule a meeting with you and Dad to review your performance evaluations. You've both been coasting in your positions. That ends now. This is a business, not a family welfare program. To Marcus, your position is safe as long as your performance justifies it. Bring me good deals. Do your job well. But understand, I don't report to you. You report through 3 levels of management, to a board that I chair. The 12 relatives sat frozen, a tableau of shock rendered in the warm amber light of the dining room. The chicken had gone cold. Wine glasses sat untouched. Someone's phone buzzed with the organizational chart, the sound absurdly loud in the silence. I walked toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. Mom. That. If you want to terminate me, you're welcome to bring that motion to the board. You'll need cause, documentation, and 5 votes from a 7-member board. I control 3 votes directly through shareholders who've given me their proxies. You'd need to convince all 4 remaining members to vote against me, including 2 who were grandfather's closest friends and business partners for 30 years. I opened the door, felt the cool evening air rush in, sharp and clean. Good luck with that. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded to my ears like freedom. 2 months later, I sat in my actual office. The board chair's office on the 19th floor, corner view, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city grandfather loved. The plaque outside read, Emma Chin, board chair and CO. That second title was new. The board had voted unanimously to consolidate executive leadership. Turns out, when you demonstrate competence consistently for 14 months, people notice. Mom still worked in HR. She arrived on time now, attended meetings prepared, stopped treating the role as a sinecure. Our interactions were professional, distant, functional. She called me Miss Chin in the office. Dad had retired. Voluntary, according to the official announcement. Really, he'd been given a choice. Retire with full benefits, or undergo a performance review that would document 15 years of inadequate client relationship management. He chose retirement. Plays golf daily now. We don't speak. Marcus transferred to the Phoenix office. Different market, fresh start, reporting to a regional manager who actually holds him accountable. His performance improved dramatically when he stopped expecting nepotism to substitute for competence. The company thrived. Revenue up 41% year-over-year. 2 major acquisitions completed. The Affordable Housing Initiative won a Civic Leadership Award. My face was in the business section of the Times. New generation leadership at Chin and Associates. But the real transformation wasn't in revenue or awards or organizational charts. It was Sunday dinners. I hosted them now. My apartment, my rules, my guest list. Uncle James and Aunt Linda came every week. Sarah from HR joined occasionally. My grandfather's old business partner Richard and his wife became regulars. We talked about real estate, politics, life, everything and nothing. No performance reviews. No competition. No ghost ledger items accumulating in the spaces between what was said and what was meant. Last Sunday, Uncle James raised his glass to Emma, who knew exactly who she was even when no one else did. I thought about that toast later, washing dishes while the city lights sparkled below. The truth was more complicated. I hadn't always known who I was. I'd spent years seeing myself through their eyes. Supporting cast, background player, the one who analyzed while others achieved. But grandfather knew. Every Saturday, every property visit, every lesson about looking past the surface to see what was really there, he was teaching me not just about real estate but about value. How to recognize it. How to build it. How to trust it even when others couldn't see it. The severance papers were still in my desk drawer. I kept them as a reminder. Not of betrayal, though that's what they represented. But of the moment I stopped waiting for permission to be who I'd already become. They thought they were firing an employee. They discovered they'd been working for me all along. The difference between those two things. That's not just a corporate hierarchy chart. That's the distance between who they needed me to be and who I actually was. That's the cost of not reading certified mail. That's the price of mistaking silence for absence, competence for compliance, patience for powerlessness. And that's the lesson I learned from grandfather, the one he spent 38 years teaching me. The most powerful person in the room is often the one nobody's paying attention to. Until suddenly everyone is.